Hello and welcome to the Socially Numb podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahey. Today it's probably going to end up being a short one because of the Easter weekend. I know people probably aren't religious or whatever. Maybe they are, but kind of messes up my schedule, having visits with the family and everything. So I'm not skipping a week. We're still going to have an episode, but it might end up a little short. Now, last week, I got right into online marketplaces and things, and we didn't even really have some video game talk. So today, probably mostly going to be video game talk. So if you come for that, that's what I hope. You'll be happy with this one. But the online marketplace, so I was able to get, I had the Leahey report set up, and I did Southbound Sports, what I talked about last week. So I set up the Leahey report with the Lion. Now, we're using Spreadshirt, so I'm only going to talk about them from here on out, not the other ones. And I gave my reasons on the last week's podcast. At least I hope I explained it decently well so that it's not as crazy. I have going to be set up, or what I did set up, was two separate stores. I've mentioned this before, one for the Leahey report and one for Southbound Sports. Now, Southbound Sports, I created the graphic in mind for the t-shirts using three colors, red, white, and blue for America. And I wanted it set up so that you could change the colors. If you change the colors, you can go ahead and basically recreate any sports team's logo. I think most sports teams have two primary colors, maybe three. You can create that on any shirt. So like if I was going to go to a Michigan game, I could create a Southbound Sports logo in maize and blue to wear to the game if I was going to cover it or whatever. So that was the idea behind that. And Spreadshirt worked really well for that. Now my problem was I had to throw in vector graphics. So a lot of the logos, especially for this show, I hand drew. So whenever I hand draw something, it didn't really... So basically, I might have talked about this last week. I don't know how much I did. But the Socially Numb and the Dad Strength graphics I drew. So I drew the Socially Numb hand and by hand, and it saved as an image. Because to me, I'm like, okay, this just needs to be the smallest, clearest thing I can get. I'm going to compress it as a PNG so it's transparent. And I threw it on a gradient background for blue, typed in my name, Socially Numb, and my name at the bottom right corner, and made the album art. Pretty simple stuff. And when I did that, I kept the transparent fist. So this time, whenever I was using Spreadshirt, if I used PNG, you couldn't change the color. Basically, you printed what was ever's on there. And now I wanted them to be able to use, and I don't know too much about shirts, so if I mess this up, I'm sorry. But I think it's like direct DTG or something. It's like some type of graphic printing, which is supposed to be higher quality. And Spreadshirt allows you to do that with their shop, but it has to be a vector graphic. So I used Affinity Photo. I think I mentioned that last time. Pretty cool program. And I wasn't able to actually vectorize it. So I had to do some work. I tested out a trial of Adobe Illustrator and some Inkscape to do some paths. I think the one I ended up getting it to work with was the Illustrator. And once I figured it out, then I was fine. I moved it back into Adobe, or back into Affinity Photo. And they didn't have, it's supposed to be a planned feature. It's just not in Affinity Photo yet. And once they add that, that's really the only thing I've ever had to use Adobe for. Maybe a little bit of like the graphics or the raw image file transfer, convert into JPEGs. But that's something I think Apple kind of like quit supporting Aperture. And so they kind of got away. So if they get back into that, then I won't need that because I can use their raw processor to feed into Affinity Photos. So that works well for me. But I talked about that. I was able to get it. They should be on the store by the time this posts. Again, it's Easter, so you should know we're recording this a little bit early. And so by the time it comes up on Monday, the shirts should be live, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So if not, they'll be up sometime shortly after this. I had to vectorize the fist logo and Socially Numb. I think I talked about maybe just having the word Socially Numb on a shirt. I still might do that. I don't know. And the same with the Leahey report. That would give us 6 variations. with graphics and ones without. The Dad Strict one, I had to do the same thing. I had to trace it. That one was a little bit choppier because for some reason, when I created the PNG, and I forget what I drew these with, might have been Photoshop, could have been Paint, could have been GIMP, I don't remember. But I drew it, and it saved it in like little grids. So it was like 8 little pieces, like 8 squares tiled together. So whenever I vectorized it, I had to like delete it, and then I had to trace it and join all these lines. And it was taking me forever because they were all different. So I basically had the computer program just redraw the whole thing. And then I had to repaint it. And because like the way the original graphic for Dad Strength is, he's holding a diaper or a diaper bag. And there's like little smell lines above them that I have in the colors of basically shit. So it's like brown, green, maroon, or like some type of reddish poop. So, and then like a dark brown. But for the purpose of this, I just made them all black because for the shirt, you need to be able to print 3 colors if I want people to be able to change it. And the idea for that is that one, the title and the outline are going to be the same color. I had to make something the same color, and I didn't want it to be the diaper bag. I wanted that to be different because I figure if you have a boy or a girl, you can change the color of that blue and pink if you're being stereotypical or whatever. And then maybe what was the third thing? Oh, the arm, the bicep. So if you're a white guy, you can use like a cream color, I think they have. If you're black, you just use the dark color. So basically you can get whatever skin color you want. I wanted it to be flexible so that you could match it with whatever to make it as personal as possible for Dad Strength. And maybe I'll use that same graphic and do like a number 1 dad shirt. I don't know. But I'm going to throw up some of those, try to get it up. It's going to be on the store in time for Father's Day. So keep an eye out for that. If you know someone, it's a dad, could be a pretty cool gift. You could help support the show. So check that out. Those will be live on Spreadshirt. And that's it for my check-in. Don't really know. As for my other check-ins, I'm still moving over the Leahey Report stuff. It's slow. A lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of spring cleaning. I like to get outside, get some photography in. So that's going to be coming. Some more rainy days, and all the articles will be in, and that'll be getting in nice and smooth, and those will be updated. But those and the Apple News ones, I think they only have a couple articles. Those and the old show notes will be coming in. And then once I get caught up, everything should be smooth. But we'll see what happens. And that's the plan for the show. So that's it right now on updates for the site and everything else. Now it's time for video games. All right, so checking in with the first video game talk. It's going to be about the PlayStation Portable, the old PSP. Now, this system, I was really big on when it came out. I think I didn't get the original batch because if I remember correctly, the PSP came out with such critical acclaim that it was going to go ahead and knock the Nintendo DS, I think that was what it was up against, out of the park. Now, I didn't like the idea of dual screen, and I still don't. It annoys me. It's like you have 2 screens, one bigger than the other now. I think they might have been the same size back in the day. I could be wrong. But I know the PlayStation came out, it was supposed to knock it out of the park. But to me, it had some shortcomings. So I got the PlayStation Portable, and my brother ended up getting one around the same time. We both got 2 special editions that were different. I want to say I had the red God of War one, and I think this was either the second or third batch, because I think, for some reason, I think mine was like a PlayStation 3000 or something. 3000 batch, it was like the last one that could have been hacked before Sony cleaned up its mess. And then it released a bunch of other ones that were like slight improvements over this one. But my brother got the same one. He got a different batch. I think his was like a Madden kit or something that was blue. And that sounds familiar to me. And I think so that pretty sure that that's what we got. So we had those. And at first it was great. I played God of War. I loved it. Very easy and portable. The same reason I've talked about having the Nintendo Switch. I was in college at the time. Whenever college hits, you're going to be out in class, you're going to be walking around, and this is pretty much before smartphones. So I could pull it up, play a few rounds, get to the save point, turn it off, My work study job was kind of just maintaining a gym. So once I did my rounds, I did them as fast as possible. I could just hang out and play. I didn't have to worry about bringing in a game system. I had the GameCube, which was portable enough that I could take it down with me. But whenever I didn't want to have to deal with that, maybe I actually had a paper to write and I didn't know if I'd finish, I'd throw the PSP in my bag and it would be great. Great for playing games. The battery life was pretty bad. So I got an extended battery, which was available, and I had to get an extended battery cover, which kind of sucked because it ended up not coming in the color of my PSP because I had the red special edition. And it only came in like gray and black. So I think I had a gray or silver one. So I had that. I had 2 extended batteries, and I actually got an actual battery charger. And that was what I played. And we got a couple games. Since me and my brother both got it, we kind of shared games. And I played through, beat a bunch of my games. And a lot of those games in that era were short. I don't remember what I had, don't remember what I beat. Same with the GameCube. It was around this time where I would only get a game that I would beat. And so I had played the games, and eventually I ended up having Dynasty Warriors 1, Dynasty Warriors 2, and a Mortal Kombat game left. And I beat the Mortal Kombat game, pretty simple, a few years ago. Around that time, there were no new games coming out. And so I hacked it. I went in, cracked apart the ROM, went in, flashed a custom ROM onto it, and I was able to load some emulators, which then went ahead and let me loop through. So I was able to play some of the Zelda games I hadn't beaten. I think it's on my list. Maybe I actually didn't play any Zelda games on that system. I know I played Pokemon. Let me look at my list real quick while I have it up. I went through, and yes, I did beat one, the Minish Cap. So here I was able to beat a Zelda game. I was able to beat a couple of other games that I hadn't beat on the PSP. A lot of Nintendo games and stuff. I went through, I had some NES games I would play. I actually had a job where I was kind of like managing a property at night, and I would have to stay up all night. So you know what I would do? I'd game all night. And I was able to go back and beat all these NES games. I had like some games I had never beaten as a kid, like Darkwing Duck. The custom ROM would let me just save states, fly through and do all that stuff. Perfect. I loved it. And I loved the system. The downfall about the short battery was okay because I could swap batteries. And for my part, it really didn't have to play that long. When I was playing overnight, I'm sitting at a house, so of course I can stay plugged in with the AC adapter right into the wall. So that worked out perfect for me. And then I was able to play anywhere on the go. And it was very revolutionary because it had decent graphics. To me, it was everything that the DS didn't have at the time. And most other people my age, like that's what they wanted. They wanted a system that you could play on the go that had good, in-depth games. Yeah, it was great that I could play Zelda on it too. And that would have been a game that I would have got on the DS. And now that I'm circling back through with the Nintendo thing, I'm going to be playing the DS games because of the 3DS I got on Thanksgiving for my daughter. She's still young. She plays her puppy game. And whenever she goes to bed, I'll play a little bit. And I'll be beating those games and bringing it into the podcast. But for now, the PSP, it was kind of like it was a mix. Because once they went ahead and fixed all that hacking stuff, it would have really took away because they didn't have any games produced for it. So as a person who purchased it, I felt no remorse for being able to crack that open and throw on some emulators. Because I had a system that I paid for. And whenever they only have 5 to 10 good games for it, very disappointing. And I really hope that doesn't happen with the Switch. And I know Sony and Nintendo are a little bit different. Nintendo seems to put through at least its own games for its console. Sony didn't do that for the PlayStation. After God of War, I don't think there was any other. I think there was 2 God of War games for it maybe. And I actually did replay them on the PS3. So I have the trophies if you check my account. And they were pretty good, pretty short. I remember exactly playing them. So it wasn't like, it was a pretty memorable experience. So it wasn't like I didn't have fun. I mean, I remember them. I remember the bosses. I remember the opening sequence and everything. So when I replayed them, it was kind of like a trip down memory lane, something that I would only get from maybe like a Zelda series, maybe Prince of Persia, a few series that I was really emotionally into at the time. And with that system, I had Dynasty Warriors. Once I hacked it, I had these 2 games. It still worked. I beat Mortal Kombat just because whenever I was watching the house, the property watch I was doing, I could play Mortal Kombat all night, and then that way I would have to do like property walks every couple minutes, like every 15.5 minutes, I think. I had to like press a button across, like 2 buttons across the thing so that they knew that I was actually walking it. They would punch times. So I would do that, and I would play in between. And so like getting in depth and playing Dynasty Warriors, if you're hooked in fighting a lot of battles, you don't want to pause at certain parts of the game. So Mortal Kombat's fine for that because you have a time limit, so you're like very limited on how many. I know I can play 3 rounds, walk, and make it. Dynasty Warriors, I was always afraid that I wouldn't be able to. Same with like regular NES games. I had a vibration set for like the timer that I need to walk. I could pause them at any time. They're NES games, not a big deal. If you die, you start back the level anyway, and it's very easy to get back where you were once you knew what you were doing. And so I put them off. Dynasty Warriors 1 I had tried to play, and I like to play them in order. And I know they're Dynasty Warriors Volume 1 and Dynasty Warriors Volume 2, but I'm going to refer to them as Dynasty Warriors 1 and 2 for the purpose of this podcast. Just because I'm referring to the PSP games, not the PS2 ones, the PSP versions of Dynasty Warriors. There are 2 games of them. And I beat all the other ones. Again, I didn't play Empires. I think I did have Empire 6 because I liked that one a lot. And I just beat 7 because I got these Dynasty Warriors. And then after a while, when you don't have time to sit down and immerse yourself in the story for 40, 50 hours, even a Zelda game, I'm loving the new one on the Switch. And I've heard rumors that they're going to make the new Dynasty Warriors like that. And I would love it. And please put it on the Switch so that I could take it with me and battle it without having to feel like I have to sit down and immerse myself, because I haven't found my way to beat Dynasty Warriors 8 yet. And that's kind of where I am. And so Dynasty Warriors 1, I'm playing, it's a grind. And again, there's no table of contents or anything that I could watch and find out how far I was in the game. But the game was very much a grind. There were some quirks to it. It wasn't the best one of the series. A lot of mistakes in it, glitch-wise, and it took me a while to beat. And it was a frustrating, but at the end it was kind of a rewarding experience because, yeah, you had to have strategy, but it was also a race because you could run out of supplies, and it was probably just the way the last level was. And again, I beat the levels over years. To get to the ending credits was amazing. So, after that, and I talked about it a few weeks ago on this, I cracked into Dynasty Warriors 2. And of course, to me, this is the last frontier for the PSP, because I have beaten all my games for it. I even beat the emulated games that I owned, because I was one of the ones too. Like, if I'm going to emulate a game, it was going to be one of the ones I had as a kid. So like, I didn't go and just download thousands of ROMs. No, I downloaded games that had nostalgia to me. And I want to say that I ended up having 45 games. 45 games, that sounds about right. And some of them are like updated Tecmo Super Bowl ones. So like, I didn't own all those games as a kid. But it was games like that. So I only downloaded games that I had as a kid because when I wanted to beat them, I wanted to kind of like say like, okay, I had these as a kid. Obviously, as a kid, you're not going to be able to beat certain games. Like, you're not going to be able to beat Super Mario 2 or Super Mario 1 without a save or anything like that. So I wanted to replay them. And I did use save states because convenience factor. And like I said, if I'm watching a house. But that's what I started with on the PSP. I started to play these NES games. I could usually beat one a night. And again, you don't have internet. Like, I guess you kind of had internet back then, but not really so much on your phones. I didn't have a smartphone at that time. So like, I wasn't looking up cheats or anything. It was kind of just like, I'm playing these fresh. I'll save and see what I can do. I had the first I had all 3 Marios, like duck hunting stuff. I don't know if there's really a goal to that one, but like, I couldn't play that. I don't even know if I have the ROM for that, just because I don't know if it would work with the televisions. I don't have the thing. But anyway, I went through, played some games. I had the Zelda, I rebeat that. I knew I beat that one as a kid. There was one, Star Tropics. Wasn't able to beat that game as a kid because the battery and the save thing would always glitch on me. And I knew how to get through the first part, And so that was fun to play back through on the PSP. So I had I definitely got my money's worth on the PSP, and only because I was able to put games on it that I played as a kid. I mean, so I loved it. And so here I was, battling my last game, Dynasty Warriors Volume 2 or Dynasty Warriors 2. And I'm actually having fun. It kind of built on the first one. I'll admit, I did hate the stages. It was still the same thing. You're like little square blocks. You have to kind of travel around. Some of them you can pass through if there are no enemies. If there are enemies, you can go and squash them in a minute or two. If there's no leader. If there's a leader, you have to sort him out. Sometimes he won't appear until you like kill everyone on the map. Then reinforcements show up and there he is. But other than that, it was much more balanced. It fixed a lot of the quirks. I didn't run into the last grind on the last level. They did have different level maps, so it was kind of like a choose your own story. And so if you went into the battle conditions, you could pick, like, okay, I could either kill this guy or that guy. And then it would show you, okay, if I beat the first guy on one save, and then I went ahead and beat the second guy on the second save, it would take me to the second part of the story so that I could see what happened. So I thought that was very cool. And unlocking a lot more dudes. Again, I didn't spend a lot of time unlocking the dudes. I just wanted to play through the story, play through a couple different clans just to see how the game was. And I enjoyed it. And remember, this is a game I bought. So like I wanted to feel like I got my money's worth. I've been saving it. Oh, wow. It's probably been at least a decade. So I'm playing a decade-old game after I just beat the Shovel Knight series on a Nintendo Switch, which has much better graphics. So I'm playing these old graphics. Some of it, yes, was hard to see. I had to squint. I found myself using like the old controls. Yeah, they didn't have, I think they did have maybe they didn't have a joystick on the right side. I have to look at my PSP. I don't think it did. But I didn't have like the camera control. You always had to hit L to recenter yourself. If you remember back in those days, they didn't have the free floating camera you controlled with the right stick while you played. Some of the other things, like you could ride horses and everything just like normal. You could build up your officers, which I let them kill some guys and get some strength, and then they really helped in the story. And then they were able to knock out some of the other weaker officers so I could just take over and crush. But that was it. Finally beat Dynasty Warriors 2 for the PSP. The final game that I'm ever going to beat on the PSP. And putting it to rest, I'm ready to pass it along to my kids. Great game system, something that they can build on. I did like the fact, and this is where Sony's getting away, so I talked about it a little bit before, how the PlayStation 4, you lost all customization, whatever. I don't even know if the first one was a word. But you can't customize a system. You can't throw your own movies up. You can't throw your own music on it. They don't want to because, it's copyright. They want you to stream everything these days. And anyone else who thinks otherwise is an idiot. It's not better. The PlayStation 3 operating system, yeah, it had its quirks. But yeah, I could at least customize it a little bit. PlayStation 4, you can't do shit. It's pretty much stuck. You can't even play all the like I format something exactly how they tell me and it still gives me crap. And this is with using like my own camera, trying to do like my own high def stuff. And the PlayStation 4, they make it as difficult as possible because they are in the hopes that maybe you'll try to put a movie on and maybe you'll just get so frustrated that you'll just say, fuck it. And I'll go ahead and click that buy button. Click the buy button right there. But I don't know. I don't know what they want. But they definitely want control. So anyone who says otherwise, that says that the PlayStation 4 is great, like system-wise, it's not. It is something that I don't know. But that's what we're looking at with the PSP. It had its own things. You could go ahead and I sat down and I was able to customize it. I was able to throw on my music. I had to go ahead and reorganize it, put them in by albums. But there I had a portable music player before my iPod. So the original iPod sucked. It was awful. It died on me. I tried to update the specs. It didn't really work. Now, whatever iPod I have now, 100 times better. I've at least had it for 4 or 5 years. No problems with the battery. No problems with it. Some of the speaker lines, the auxiliary cables in my car have died before the iPod. So the iPod's still working great for me, and I know they don't make them anymore, and I will do everything in my power to keep that iPod alive. But back in the day, my first iPod dies, so hey, here's a PSP, and I was able to use that as my basic music player while I worked, because I also did a work-study job at an office, so I'm like sitting there typing all day. We also put movies on it. I had some Three Stooges and stuff, and the knock on it was that the PSP had their own proprietary memory card that you had to use. Fortunately, it was something that I had from a camera. So I had like a camera that was Sony that took awful pictures. My cameras now put it definitely to shame. Even my phone camera puts it to shame. But the downside of that, I'm like, well, this camera sucks. But I have a memory card in here that's quite big that came with it. I got it in some package deal. Back in the day before people would put their photos on a computer, the photos would stay in the camera. Like that's how you looked at them until you were ready to print them. You take them to a store. I think they still have the kiosks. You plug it in or you give it to them and then they would print your pictures for you. I mean, like, oh man, that sounds so old. But now, before, like I had to even get an adapter to even try to print them at my house. So I had this, and I even had the adapter because, yeah, I wanted to print some photos or whatever. And then, boom, I put it in. Works for the PSP. So I had a large memory card from my camera, and I was like, well, this camera sucked. I'll throw this one away, and I'll just use it for the PSP. So I went through, I formatted some of my movies, some of my DVDs, which was a pain. You had to rip them. So I had like a choice of like Three Stooges. Some of them they locked them with DRM, so you couldn't do anything with them. But here I was able to go ahead and download what I needed. So I go ahead, I download the files that I need for certain movies, and then I would have to convert them. And back in that day, processing powers on computers were awful. At least mine was. I even had a media player computer, but it would take forever to convert these movies that like wouldn't play because Sony was they didn't want you to play that many. But I mean, it's basically as bad as it is on the PS4 now. You have to kind of pick and choose what formats and what size and codecs you need. That's how the PSP was. And then you had to go ahead and I had to put a little thumbnail in there at a certain size so that it would show me in the preview. Because on a quick glance, I wanted to see like what music albums were in there and everything. And it took me a while, but I got it customized. And that PSP went with me everywhere. But then you grow up, smartphones come out, and the PSP slowly fades. When I'm not playing games, I quit bringing it with me. I tried to play some mobile games, awful. Some of the other ones like Pokemon Go are different, and those are basically the only game I play on my phone anymore. I tried Super Mario Run, but I just couldn't bring myself to buy it because it's not, to me, it's not Mario. You are not running around actually doing things. There's no challenge in Super Mario Run. My 1-year-old daughter plays it. She can beat the levels. And yeah, maybe it gets tougher, but I don't know that. As a consumer, I don't know if it does or not. Because it's not free to me. I mean, yeah, well maybe, and I hate to say this, but yeah, maybe if it was a game that wasn't free at all. That's what they should have did. Make a Mario game. Hell, make it $20. People would still buy it. I mean, it would have to make more money on that than what they did now, because it got so much hype. And then when it came out for free, it was kind of just like, there's like 100 other games exactly like this. Yeah, you're not Mario. Yeah, you're not getting coins or you're not like seeing toads or whatever. But it's like, do I want to pay for this? I'm not actually controlling him. Don't try to convince me that I should pay for a game. That was not a game. And we talked about this before. It's kind of like that stupid Datura game or whatever I played. It's a video experience. That's what Mario reminded me of. I wasn't playing a game. I wasn't challenged. Ooh, I have to time my jump. Man, I've been timing jumps with both hands for years, decades. Because you have to have the guy pointed in the right direction and everything. Just because I need to time my jump while he's running, that's not a game. That's stupid. Creating zombies out there. Of course I'm not going to pay for that. So I hate how some people in the media like chastise people saying, well, yeah, of course no one's going to pay for that, Nintendo. No one's going to buy your games anymore. Everyone expects everything to be free. No, I expect a game to be a game. I want to do with it what I want to do with it. Same with the PlayStation 4. If you want me to buy another PlayStation, let me do stuff. Because as it is right now, I'm not buying a PlayStation 5. With the amount of media boxes and streaming stuff, I don't need a PlayStation 3, or I guess a PlayStation 5 like I needed a PlayStation 3. PlayStation 3 had apps. Now my TV has apps on it, which are garbage. But I can go ahead and buy another box, like an Amazon Fire Stick or something, that can get me the apps just as good as the PlayStation 4. And it doesn't limit. I can't download my own files. I can't download movies on Vudu from that. I can do it on the PlayStation 3, but I can't do it on the PlayStation 4. And to me, that's how the PSP was. It started out great. Then with all the little quirks and everything, they try to get you to lock down. Then they come out with the Vita. And then they wonder why it doesn't sell. They're like, oh wait, so you can't just buy games? Because that's what they wanted you to do. They wanted you to buy games and download them. And then you couldn't even have the disc to play at any time. And in that way, the PS Vita, or whatever they call it, Vita, that system became a precursor to what would become digital downloads, which I kind of prefer nowadays. But even back then, when you're having a portable system, and the thing that really kicked the bucket on that was they still wanted you to pay for their proprietary storage. So you weren't able to just buy an SD card, which around that time, they were still kind of expensive, but you could get more storage using that. And for firmware updates, then they could have expanded and used like HDXC or whatever, SDHC, I don't know what they are back then, but they could have went ahead and built those out. And then you have a system that works, it's scalable. People don't want to spend $80 for a 30 gigabyte card that holds 3 games. And then you have to download on them. It doesn't make any sense. Like it was kind of ahead of its time in that regard, but it didn't have the storage. And then it didn't have the games. I already knew from the PSP that no one made games for it. There were a handful of games, some baseball games, some NFL games, like I said, that came out early. But after that, that was it. And you couldn't play with friends because like their ad hoc was awful. So you couldn't like get friends together. At that point, you might as well buy a console. And then the way that computer gaming was, like if you wanted to play online, you almost had to play on computers. Even the PS3 is kind of weird. I know some of the ones, like I did Resident Evil. I didn't beat it 100% yet. I think I'm on the last chapter, so I should just beat it. But anyway, I know that game has online and it works well for the PS3. But the PSP was before that and it didn't really work, at least on mine, and I definitely wasn't going to trust them with the Vita. Then they say that you can go ahead and almost have a Nintendo Switch situation where you can be playing on the PS3, plug in your Vita, and then just take it and go or whatever, and it should sync up your spot. But then the game producers never actually followed through because you still had to buy the game twice, I think. Like it was a really weird situation. Like only some games let you transfer from the PS Vita to the PS3. And I think you can get some of those on the downloadable things now. I think Shovel Knight might be one. Maybe not. Maybe you can only transfer between different PS3 systems. But some games did have a cloud save system that would let you transfer. So yeah, maybe Shovel Knight on the PS3 and PS Vita could have worked. Maybe it does work. I just don't know. But in that regard, the PSP was ahead of its time, and it kind of was held back by Sony's archaic practices and the DRM heavy crap that they were trying to get into, even with their movies. But with that, the end of an era. I know I talked about it, not too much. People probably don't even own PSPs. So I got that finished. Next, like I said, I do have the 3DS. I hear rumors that it's going away. I hear rumors that it's here to stay. So I don't know which ones to believe with the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch, like I said, I'm waiting for them to announce new games. I have one, blind faith. I bought in. I'm not getting the games. I'm not seeing them. I'm waiting. I want them to announce an Assassin's Creed, or like just Ubisoft announce their new Assassin's Creed and bring it to it. I understand that it was short development cycles, and most games for it are going to be announced at E3. I just hope that some of the games I want are going to be brought to it, because at this point, I foresee myself not playing games that much in the future. The Nintendo Switch has kind of ruined me. If they don't make games for it, that might be my last hurrah. the Nintendo Switch. I mean, they're making some games. I think there's an Nintendo or an NBA Switch or an NBA Street type game that's coming out. I really butchered that, but it's kind of like that. I could probably pick that up for a cheap download. If they let you update rosters, I don't know how they're going to run it. It's $20. Those are the type of games that the Switch would really excel at, and that would pretty much be what I turn into a gamer with. I don't want to sit here and play these great RPGs where you're living like a fantasy life. I'm not a kid anymore. I enjoy my life. Yeah, some of the stories are great, and I do like some of the storylines, and I've argued that before in the past, and I've said that they are becoming better than movies. But I'm a sports guy. I like to watch live sports and play video games. I have a dual TV set up for that purpose. And once I beat the PS3 games, I beat some of the paid PS4. If Nintendo's paid games get me some old N64 games, NES games, whatever, on the Switch for free, and they stay in your system after the 30 days, which there's been some rumors that they don't, I won't be continuing my PlayStation Plus for the PS4. I'll put that out there. Maybe they can port Doom over for the Nintendo Switch. It's really the one game I like for the PS4 that I would play online and would pay for online. I just haven't played it for a while. I had friends that played it, especially if they could get something where Doom hosted servers and it cross-played with the PS or the PC crowd. That's what Nintendo should work on. Because yeah, I would go ahead and rebuy the game. Maybe Duke Nukem. You're doing remasters, you're doing Duke Nukem 3D remasters. Why don't you go ahead and release it for the Nintendo Switch? I'm pretty sure it ports over. You can port, I know it will take some time, but go ahead and make that a monster. Work with Nintendo, say, hey, you guys are falling behind the times here. We're going to go ahead and set up an old game, get you some online gameplay, and get you some of that adult crowd. That's what they need to do. That's what I want to see, and that's where I hope gaming's coming. But from here on out, I'm going to be covering probably the Switch, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and the Nintendo 3DS, as long as I have a couple games for that to beat. So those will be the games I focus on. We'll see what happens as I beat more and more games. It might help, or the podcast might end up evolving a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, and it depends on which games I play and as I run out of games, because I am running out of games. If I'm doing a game a week, I know I could throw in the free PlayStation games, but lately those haven't been my cup of tea. They've been so bad, it's kind of soured me on gaming, and we'll see how it goes. But again, short podcast this week due to the Easter weekend. Let's talk a little bit about the PSP. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Socially Numb with Richie Leahey.